We are live.
Okay. Welcome to the December 5th, 2022 meeting of the Ad Hoc Special Committee on Sponsored Research at the University of Rhode Island. The meeting is being held in person with committee members participating remotely. At this time, I will conduct a roll call. I'll ask Michelle to conduct a roll call of those in attendance and see if a quorum's present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called.
Tom Ryan.
Present WebEx.
Neil Kerwin.
Present WebEx.
Bethany Jenkins.
Present via WebEx.
Mark Parlange.
Present WebEx.
And we have Margot Cook.
Present WebEx.
Peter Snyder.
Present via WebEx.
Okay. Looks like we have a quorum. A reminder to all members for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, clearly identify yourself with your comments. I think this is a relatively small group, so I think our note taker should be able to see it. Participants on the WebEx are required to keep their cameras on, and members, all people present at the location should be clearly visible on the camera. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies traditional homeland of the Narragansett Nation and Niantic people. Okay, first topic. I sent out an agenda, and I think for this meeting, we just want to get clarity on the purpose and the goal of the ad hoc committee. And I think we can probably go around the committee members and ex officio members, and obviously Peter, around what we would think would be an acceptable outcome of this committee, right? So that when this committee theoretically has a beginning and an end, we're supposed to make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees on how research, the department, the board's interaction with the department, how it should be structured. So I think that's what we should spend our time on today. So, and then make sure we have the necessary resources and then set our plan in motion. I don't know if anybody had a chance to read some of the material that Peter sent, but it was fantastic, Peter. Voluminous, but fantastic. I think you guys, I applaud you for the work, bringing in the outside group, what they're called, the ORD, or NORD, excuse me, and teeing up those questions. I thought they did a fantastic job. When was that done, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
About 7 or 8 months ago.
Okay. Yeah, it was really, it was thoughtful. It was transparent. And I think, that's what we want to have a discussion today. This is, I know it's been frustrating for the board to understand our research goals. I think there's frustration with the faculty, junior and senior faculty investigators. I'm sure there's frustration on Peter's department and his team, whether it's lack of resources or support, or maybe people just lack of understanding, I guess. I mean, what is transpiring. So I think this is a great opportunity for for us to take a fresh look at all of this, using the work that Peter and his team have compiled. I know Neil and Bethany certainly have more experience in this area than I do. But I think all of us together, along with Peter and his team, can come to a good conclusion at the end of this. So I think we should just talk about what do we think the goals of this committee are. And I guess I'll ask I have some written down, but I'll ask Neil or Bethany if you want to take a shot at it, and we can just keep some copious notes and we'll pull it all together.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, I'd be more than happy to defer to you as the chair to get us started with your sense of goals, and then I think I maybe Bethany and I can weigh in then.
Okay. All right. Well, I had more questions. I think that my first goal was just to determine how we should be resourced and organized for our entire research program at URI, with the goal of doubling our research funding in, I said 5 years. I don't know if that's real or aspirational, but I think Peter, you had 250 in 10 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I guess one of my questions, maybe from the start, is the purview of the committee to try to understand and see what's needed to achieve goals such as that holistically involving the entire university, or is the purview restricted to an analysis of the research support function that my division provides?
No, the entire university.
Okay, because
This is not,
literally all the colleges and the deans and the ADRs and how we recruit and retain faculty and how we promote faculty and
oh yeah, it's the complete picture. It's how we recruit, retain,
yeah.
how we incentivize, how we train. I mean, there's all sorts of issues that were brought up, in the SWOT analysis,
Mhm.
that we have. This is not about your department per se. This is about research at the entire university, and how should it be structured? What's the oversight? What's the board's role? All of it, Peter, to that point. So I think we should set some kind of aspirational. I don't know what the number is, but what is our number today, Peter, as we stand?
So from all sources combined, so that's
Yep.
federal plus private plus contracts,
Right.
State contracts, it's 123 million.
Okay.
I think we can double our research portfolio, but it would require attracting the faculty that really want to accelerate research
Right.
careers.
Oh, it's gonna require. I mean, I think that's the clarity of this thing, right? It's going to require resources,
Yeah.
people, and dollars.
Yeah.
Right. We're not gonna do it the way we're currently structured. I mean, that was clear throughout the plan.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then I think this committee should recommend the best way for the Board of Trustees to oversee and support sponsored research. That should be one. I think that should be one of our outcomes. I'd like us to answer this R1, R2 question. I mean, we keep dancing around it. We hear about it. I know something about it, and more than I should, less than I want, or less than I should, more than I want. But and it may be we just deal with it as an issue, and we decide, given where we are and the implications that has on our overall budget to become an R1 university, it's just beyond our reach now. I don't know, but I'd like to at least answer that question and get it off the table one way or the other. Peter, you raised your hand.
Yeah, so John Stringer has done a phenomenal job creating a tool that's programmed in Excel where you can model how we would move if you individually or in any combination modify any one of the 7 different variables that go into the formula for our Carnegie ranking classification.
Perfect.
And it's really an incredibly useful tool. I would invite everybody to play with it. But the point I want to make is that the other day I was using it and I did the mental exercise of doubling our research portfolio and seeing what that would do. And if we were to double our research portfolio, it still would not move us into an R1 classification, because the research grants expenditures is only one of 7 important variables. And we really have so much more to do in several of the other areas, such as the number of social science and humanities PhDs that are awarded.
Yeah.
That doubling the research portfolio by itself doesn't mask those other variables. So I think we have to look at that holistically.
Okay, that was my earlier point, that it's broader than just the research portfolio. People need to understand it. I mean, it's about adding, doctorates in philosophy. I mean, the whole social science area has to be expanded. So it's more than just research, to your point. But anyway, I'm not saying we'd have to do that. I'm just starting this as a starter to say, this is what I'd like to have the committee, at least I would think it would be successful if we answered these questions. The other one more is, well, I got a few more, but identify some quick steps that we could do that would jumpstart some of our research efforts. And, we all know the research, we can see it from Peter's work, and we know it intuitively that a lot of it's coming from GSO and engineering, pharmacy, nursing. So, and some of those people, those units basically function on their own, and they get a fair amount of research out and done effectively and efficiently. So I'd like to understand if there's some things that we could do to help them, either pull some barriers away or some resources to move that along quicker, right? Fish where the fish are. Now, if you read the report, the danger in that is this winner-loser theory, right? That the ones who are producing the most research are getting the most resources, which seems to make sense. But that compounds itself by the people who are not doing it saying, well, now I can't really do it because I'm not getting the resources. So it's a little conundrum, but it's one I think we should look at. And then fully, I guess this is just part and parcel of this, kind of fully understand. Well, let me back up. I think we need we need a mission statement for our research at the university. Now, we may have one. I'm sure we do. But I think we should take a look at that and get some agreement on that, because throughout the whole report that Peter's group commissioned, there was a consistent theme of lack of clarity on what the ORD provides. Some people knew it, mostly I would say the senior investigators. Some people didn't, they didn't know where to reach. So I think just a clear, and maybe, the mission statement might be good as it is, and then it's just a communication issue that we have to clearly get the president's team, the board, the key faculty, the deans on board with, this is the mission and goal of ORD. And then, there'll be some bullet points underneath it. But when I went through, I think I looked at Montana State, Utah State, I looked at a few of them, and it was, I'll get to you, Peter.
Yeah.
They all had clearly defined mission statements and what they did and what they didn't do. So I would like that for this group at least to look at that statement and either modify it or enhance it or find a way to clearly communicate it to the entire university community, to your point that you raised earlier, Peter. Okay, Peter, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to, just a point of clarification. ORD stands for the Office of Research Development, and it's only one office within the division. That office it has a specific mission and function. It's one of the lowest performing offices because it's staffed by 1.5 employees for the entire university. So that makes it hard to fulfill that research development function. And the concern about that is what prompted the NORDP audit in the first place earlier in the year. Research development is one aspect of what the division does. It's not the totality of it. But I do agree with you that it's not as it's currently constructed meeting the needs of our most productive faculty, as well as our new faculty that need to get their foot on the ground and get going. I also do have a mission and vision statement that's in the slide set that's in the folder, and I'd be happy to share it at any time on the screen if you want to see it.
Right. And this notion that was brought up, and Peter, you can expand on this, is what is the best model for the University of Rhode Island research, right? They teed up, I guess there's two, I was a little confused, but there's a central model and a unit model, right? So you centralize research where most of it's controlled in one, and then there's support across the university versus some hybrid, right? Which I guess is where we are now.
Yep.
And then they teed up model A and model B, or AB, where I guess model A, the R&D office, targeted partnerships, opportunities, funding, but it was more with the unit. And model AB, I guess it was a bigger role. So I guess I'd like to understand that and where we should be. So, and then I'd like to understand all the acronyms. We'll get to those later. Okay, those are just some quick starters. I'll let Neil or Bethany jump in.
Bethany, you want to go first? No? Okay. I'll kick off a couple of others. I think, Tom, you hit on probably the most important point, which will drive the rest of what we're going to do, and that is, what is the goal with regard to the University of Rhode Island's sponsored program? And Peter's mission statement may be the right one. I think the committee ought to review that and affirm that that's the case. But we're on, the cusp of a brand new strategic plan. And, we would like to hear from Mark and the community that he interacts with about where sponsored research activity and research and scholarship more broadly, fits into the future of the institution as Mark and the community see it. I think it's important at the outset to ensure that we don't send a message that classic sponsored research, and it's not always easy to draw where that boundary is the only thing that the Board of Trustees is concerned with. I mean, there is extraordinarily important research and scholarship and professional work being done on the campus that benefits the intellectual life of the campus, benefits the reputation of the institution, makes the institution attractive to new generations of faculty that will never generate the kind of money that the current drivers and future drivers in the sciences and STEM in general will do. So when we redid the charter for the Academic Affairs Committee, we made that point. And we probably won't spend a great deal of time on that as a committee, but the larger committee, the Academic Affairs Committee, needs to take that ball and run with it a little bit more. If R1 in Carnegie is not our aspiration, certainly maintenance of R2 should be. And I think Peter and others on the campus. Mark's obviously got a lot of experience with as chief academic officer and dean in major research institutions. We want to be sure that everything else we do has a clear eye on what it requires to maintain R2 status. I think the issue of management that you've raised is also important, and that is what exactly do the deans of the schools and colleges understand to be their obligations with regard to providing incentives to faculty at all levels, but perhaps particularly younger and mid-career faculty who have the capacity to generate and attract outside funding, but simply perceive obstacles in the way, whether they're real or well, they're all real if they perceive it. So I'd be very interested to take a look at how each of the schools and colleges not only perceive their role, but position the resources that they have to get that work done. I'm very interested in the role that the Research Foundation plays in all of this work, how the Research Foundation's work contributes to the goal for sponsored research on the campus, the extent to which our Board of Trustees and Mark have a role in influencing the Foundation's agenda, and how that particular dynamic will work out over time. I am, particularly interested in our ability to identify faculty with very high potential in this area that are simply either not participating or hitting below their weight. And you talked about what we could do relatively quickly. This is an area we all know where fast turnaround is really not possible. But the ability to hit a couple of home runs early with some targeted effort on the part of Peter Shop, the provost, will be important. And actually, when it does come to management, I'm used to situations where the provost has obvious and particular responsibility for the scholarly life of the campus, answering to, of course, the president. We have a new provost coming on board. She and Peter will be colleagues. I'd like to make sure that they're both singing from the same hymnal, if that's the right way to put it, and that their respective roles in the institution are working in concert with each other. So that's what I've got.
Okay, that's great. Bethany?
Hi, thanks, Tom and Neil, for those really insightful thoughts. I think to just put a pin in really something both of you said is, in order to, I think, function effectively as this committee, I think we really need to understand the landscape of how sponsored research is resourced, again, across campuses. And we do have kind of a truly hybrid model where some colleges are resourced differently than others. And so the landscape can sort of vary depending on where you sit at URI. And I'm imagining perceived barriers can vary depending on where faculty sit at URI. And so I think engaging not only Peter's office, but again, college leadership in this conversation is going to be really important. And I'd also like to make sure that at some point we allow for, and I don't know the best way to do this, a survey tool or some kind of, I think it's going to be important if we're sort of going to be putting, if faculty perceive that there's external pressure in terms of really wanting to grow the research enterprise, to sort of bring them along and make sure we capture sort of, again, their voices in terms of what perceived barriers and successes might be. And so, how we do it, that as a committee could be something for discussion. But I think if we allow for some sort of input into that from the ground up, people are going to be feeling like they're being carried along in terms of this unified mission to grow research at the university, and again, research writ large across disciplines.
Peter, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know some of that work was done when you brought in this outside group, right? We surveyed a cross section of people. Who were the people involved in that? To Bethany's point.
Yeah, with the two different audits, one was by NORDP, that National Organization for Research Development Professionals. The other was of the Office of Sponsored Programs, and that was conducted by Hanover Associates.
Right.
Each of those two processes started with both querying faculty and staff across the university, as well as conducting targeted interviews and then focus groups. But the purpose of the surveys and the interviews were specific to the functions of those offices. That was the remit of each of the audit, was to determine perceptions, concerns, frustrations with those two offices, OSP and research development. What we didn't do was survey the faculty about what they might perceive as changing priorities of the institution, refocusing on research productivity as part of our new strategic plan, how that might impact individuals in colleges that don't have the same resources as other colleges do, to Bethany's point. So those kinds of questions were not asked during those two audits. They were really focused on the function of the offices.
And Mark, I want to come to you. But one of the takeaways, there were a lot of takeaways from that report. And I encourage you to read the SWOT analysis, which was good. But the interesting dilemma, and I'm talking about the productive, they call units, I guess, which would be the colleges. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah.
Unit, yeah.
Yeah.
So the colleges fit. The quote was, if we hire more unit level support for the colleges, it requires us to reduce funding for faculty lines. Then that impacts research and teaching time. So it's a spin, right? They're looking for more dollars in their individual unit for researchers, and yet when they do it, they say, well, this is your budget. You still have to figure it out. So that means you're going to increase the teaching load, and which runs afoul against trying to increase research. So and these are from productive. These were quotes from productive senior researchers.
Yep.
And what I would say productive, I mean productive from the college itself. I don't know the particular individuals, but that's a little bit of stuck out to me, that how do we fund this appropriately so that research, one, is not spread just evenly, research dollars, but it's spent appropriately, one, for sponsored research, but also for scholarly research. And it's additional funding. It's incremental funding. We are not going to be able to double our research dollars with our existing budget. That's just no question. I think it's the job of this committee, along with Peter and his department and the provost, to understand where we want to make those research bets, right? We know the challenge we have is a budget going to the state. Our operating budget's a challenge in and of itself. So, how do how do we find the right amount I don't know if we ever get the right amount of money, but I think with the limited resources, what do we need to do, and then take it from there. So I also felt that I saw a lot of the faculty felt the level of support was pretty good. It was interesting. It was uneven. It was really uneven across the level of support. Some people felt was really good. And then some people felt that, maybe we're spending too much time on budgeting and procedural and compliance, and we're not spending enough time supporting the actual finding out where the funding is, pre-award support, post-award support, all of those issues. And I think we do need to understand that. So Mark, I'll stop. What's your goal of this committee? And then Margot.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So first of all, I think this is a very important committee. I think this is a very important discussion. So I for one, certainly applaud it. I think there's a bunch of things I just want to remind, and it comes back to the last Board of Trustees meeting, just to set the context, and then I'll talk about some things, and then to your earlier point, Tom, about some quick wins, some of the things that we've tried to do here. But let me just remind everyone where we are as a university. In the last 2 decades, we've seen a 37% cut from the state government. To survive, the university grew its student population, and basically its undergraduate student population, by 33%. To be able to teach these additional students, we grew our teaching faculty by some 15%. And over that time period, we kept our tenure track growth, the people that are doing the research that informs their teaching. We've kept it flat. In fact, we've slightly contracted over that time period. So that's a tough, through external forces and maybe not recognizing where we're being driven towards what I would call more of a teaching school, as opposed to a school that's really focused as the research flagship university, as we should be as a leading research school. So I want to talk a little bit about the areas across the campus. It's really important that we really drive our research excellence here. It's really important in terms of being able to attract both new faculty colleagues going forward, but also to be able to attract really the top graduate students that we would like to see. I'm going to give you, Tom, one number that I didn't present at that last meeting, but just it's important that we all know that when we present our student numbers, and we say that we have 17,500 students at URI, and then we say that we have about 15,000 undergraduates, so hence 2,500 graduate students. Of that 2,500 graduate students, really only about 500 of them are PhD students. We only grow new PhDs each year by about 96 students. So that's important. A lot of this is cultural, but a lot of it, at the end of the day, does come down to the generation of revenue for the university. Not having that revenue, we have rather high teaching loads here, and the expectations then, of people saying, oh, you're going to go R1. No, we have to really take a pause here as a university, look and go into some detail about what we are doing, what we are going to continue to do, and what we're probably going to have to stop doing, and where we're going to have to have support. The 2 quick wins, of course, last year we decided, to put some of our reserves into being able to recruit 20 new PhD students. And we did this across the board, across all colleges and schools. We were able, then also the foundation actually put in an additional $500,000 to be able to recruit an additional 10 students. So we were able to go out this past year and really offer PhD fellowships that we've never offered before at the university. And the quality of the students, and we've met them, is really quite amazing. I just want to also point out, though, that some of the deans really did the right things. If we didn't have the PhD students at the level that we were expecting for fellowship appointments, and the one college I'm going to point to is the College of Nursing, Barb Wolf did not admit any of the students. She wasn't just saying, oh, look, I've got reserves and I'll take anybody. No. She was, she really set a standard for quality there and said, we've had some really top ones in recent years that she's been able to recruit, but that was good. The other is the research office. Now, it doesn't matter which office we go to, whether it's the general counsel, I saw Alyssa, or if it's HR or whatever, everybody is underfunded and under-resourced by at least 50%. And others will tell me even more than that. But part of the importance of the budget on understanding inputs to the university and having transparency on where it's being directed across the university is really important. I feel though that the first thing is getting to the bottom of things and being able to talk about, as you said at the beginning, Tom, sort of mission, vision, and so forth. I think it's worth, again, looking at the College of Nursing. When the dean, Barbara Wolf, came in, they were producing about 6 papers a year. Today, they're producing 60 publications in top journals, and this is fundamental. You want to go up in the rankings, you have to write good, significant papers on important topics that the rest of the world cares about. That's going to improve the reputation of the university. And she was able to do that. She was able to recruit faculty who are now getting major competitive NIH grants at the senior level and at the juniors levels. And it's a lot about, again, about culture. It's about expectation. It's about, what we value and what we see as important. So you also made, Tom, at the beginning, a comment about, getting out and talking. I spent a lot of time this past year meeting all the colleges, meeting a lot of the departments, and talking to folks about their expectations and their hopes. And again, I think we have a lot of people that are really good that want to do it, but I think it's also a question about, being realistic about where we've been, but where we can go. And again, it's going to come back to generating the revenue, being able to invest in startup funds, being able to invest in new faculty to be able to support graduate students at the beginning for these new junior faculty and really help them get going, and then not overburdening them with very heavy teaching loads.
So Mark, is it your goal to shift some of our limited resources or reallocate some of our limited resources to research, sponsored research?
So what I want to do is I would like to look and have an honest appraisal of where faculty are spending time on teaching. So that's the resource that we have. There is no secret pot of money, and I can't just shift one thing. I wish there was, I wish I could take our highly funded football team, in quotes with asterisks, and shift it over. That's not going to do it. I think what we have to do is, first of all, we have to say, what is our value? What do we value? We have to be able to have a frank conversation. I won't name names, but I've been in some conversations as of Friday last week that were real eye openers for me. Certain things that, and Neil made a comment about some of the previous schools, things that normally you just take for granted about where you're publishing, the impact of those publications, where they stand internationally. Those things, it was interesting to me that people, some of our really good people, were actually stopping and pausing and thinking, hey, this is a completely different conversation than what we've had before. So what I want to do is, yes, I want to generate new revenue. I want to look at what we're doing. I don't want us to carry lots and lots of small courses that we teach repeatedly, or I really also want us to ask some tough questions about, are we having to teach everything every semester, and repeat it? People, to do research, you need time to think, you need support, you need to be in an atmosphere where you can collaborate and work with other people. You need to, of course, have the administrative support. So we're going to,
Yeah, well, to that point, Mark, what I meant reallocation, that could be just reallocation of time too.
yeah,
Not
that's
just
exactly where
at
what I
that
would
point.
like to be able to do. Those people that would like, not everybody has to be treated the same. Those that really want to do research and have the time, commitment and capacity and really want to invest should not have the same, some people will
Right.
contribute to the university doing intensive teaching, and they'll be teaching intensive faculty,
Yeah.
and that's great. But we also have to, recognize that we also have to allow people time to be able to
I
do
just want to
research.
make sure the output of this committee is in sync with what you want and
Yeah,
what you like.
thanks.
It answers the question. I mean, we're not going to solve the dollar issue, but we're going to tee it. I think we're going to tee it up and say these are some areas that, this is why people are shying away from big, complicated research grants,
Right.
because there's no cross function. It's tough. They got teaching loads. They can't get seed money and blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
they kick it to another university to lead it. Then I think there's also some cultural issues that, no one wants to talk about, but I'm sure we're going to surface some of those that people are going to have to deal with. You got to contribute. I don't care if it's it's part of your job. I'll tell you what, one of the strengths we have is all the young faculty that we're bringing in. They are dying to do more research.
Yeah.
They're open. They want the help. Even the junior faculty are saying, we just need some training. We need to understand the grant process, what Peter's department can support us with. So some of it's just communication and education. But you're right. We can't keep. We do know. I don't know where the money's coming from, but we can't keep teaching the amount we're teaching and still do research. Seems
That's
to me.
right.
All right. Okay. Margot?
So, I mean, I think a lot of it's been said, but I want to just call on what Mark just said, because we talk a lot about this budget issue. And what we both have realized, and Mark said it well, over the last year, is that the university, because of its constraints, its fiscal constraints, is turning into a teaching school from what we want to be.
Right.
And our balance of out-of-state versus in-state has an impact on the school. The need to move to accept more students, because that's our revenue source, has really shifted the ability for us to allocate those resources to where we actually want them to go.
Right.
And Mark's very, very good point, which he picked up on right when he came to the school, and I never really put this together, is that we don't have a lot of PhD students. We don't have the relative to other schools that we want to look like. We actually have allocated away from the building blocks of what you need to become a great research university. And so part of this is to me, it's like, as you said, let's set a mission statement that's consistent with the strategic plan that Mark just released, and understand, let's give some clarity to what we want to be. Like, what's the dream? What's the big goal? And then, I read through everything Peter sent out too. I thought it was great. But some of that then is, how do we operate? So there's an external, there's like a big picture mission statement. Here's what we want to be. Here's what our big goals are. Then there's an efficiency aspect to the resources that we do have, and ensuring that those resources are really aligned with those goals. And I think Peter's, my sense is Peter's struggling to try to catch up with what the big goals are. And in some ways, the university has drifted away from those goals. And so there's a big picture thing we can help get the focus back on as a committee, but then shining a light on some of the inefficiencies that exist within the current system and ensuring that our current resources are actually aligned with the goal. I think that's something we could actually affect. To your point about what's the shorter term versus the longer term, I think there's a disconnect right now because we haven't done this big picture work.
I couldn't agree more with everything you said. I think one of the other areas we need to, as we're listening to this, and I had jotted it down but didn't say it before, this area around facilities, where we are with lab space, vivariums, office space. I mean, that is, I can tell you in my little world, Peter knows this, and at the Neuroscience Institute, I mean, we're interviewing some top-notch directors, and they're saying, "Well, you guys don't have any labs. You don't have any space for animals. How are you going to do research?" So, we can talk about being a research university, and to Margot, all the points you raised about, we're a teaching, but we don't have the facilities. So I think I'd like this group at least to take a look at that from the standpoint.
And if that's a recommendation that comes out of this group, that should go over to Mike's.
Right. Exactly.
I hope that at some point we can speak about the animal care facilities in particular, because we do have some plans. We need support for those plans, but we actually have an actionable plan to dramatically improve our care facilities.
This is going to be harder for you, Peter, because this is your area. So I don't want you to feel like we're jumping on you and you don't have plans. We know this is intended to support what you've been doing and maybe banging your head on the wall a little bit, right? So we're all in this thing together. We need to understand that that's why I wanted to have this session, so we had clarity on what this mission statement was. And to the point, it's certainly a bent towards sponsored research, but it's also, we're looking at scholarly research and how do we help it. But at the end of the day, if this committee doesn't come up with ways to increase sponsored research over the next 5 years, then I think would not be a successful outcome. So the other one thing before I get Neil, the other is peer review. I'd like to understand the peer institutions. I know I think there were some pieces that were in the book about, URI was 115 million, UConn 285, UNH 150, UMass 200, Montana State 200, Utah State 300, and to Peter's point, that we're doing it with 2 or 3 people. I guess we use a consulting firm, but to help assist those 2 people because we can't hire the right number of people. But I would just add that to one of our goals. Neil.
Well, I think Bethany was up before me, Tom. So I'll
sorry,
follow her. Yeah.
Just to really also put a pin in something Neil said that I think is really important, is that our new provost is brought along in this process, because one of the things that happens is we had, just to use an example of what I'm speaking about, we had a redo of general education curriculum at the university. And so it spun off this need for a bunch of new classes to be taught. And so faculty lines were tied to deans that were putting in proposals to the provost to get these faculty lines. There was teaching committed to these new interdisciplinary general education courses. So a new faculty, for example, that had specialties in, medical microbiology might be teaching a grand challenge course that was kind of outside their wheelhouse and not something they could spin up super quickly. And so I'm using that as a granular example of something that can happen when the academic program kind of takes on a life of its own that's not mindful of how that impacts people's ability to do scholarly work and research.
Good point.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, what I wanted to underscore was Mark's point about that he's made more broadly about support for the institution. I think one of the audiences that we ought to consider for our committee is the state legislature and governor. Peter has demonstrated, Mark has demonstrated the multiplier effect of the investment of $1 in the university. And, from where I sit, admittedly, all of my management experience has been at private institutions. But even I could figure out that if you're going to get, $3.50 back for every one you invest, it's really money tremendously well spent. So, as we move toward the completion of this charge that we have, one of the things we need to think about is how do we communicate to a state government that has historically underfunded the institution to the extent that it has, and from where I sit, it's shocking, frankly. How do we let them know that in order to get to where we can get, we're going to need them along with us. And so Bethany's point about about the various pieces of our mission working in concert could not be more important. If you're asking the same faculty to teach a lot and at a very high level, and asking them to conduct significant sponsored research, you're asking the impossible. So that balance has really got to be reestablished, and you leave that to Mark and the provost, to get that balance reset.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. The governor and general assembly, we just have to make sure we speaking on the same page with what Mark's going up there
Right.
with, right?
Of course.
And we just dovetail it in, but this is a way for us to say, hey, this is what we're doing to help offset this budget deficit. We're not just coming up and asking, we're trying to drum up some of our own money here. That will help. But I mean, I would think this facility issue is going to be a big state issue. I mean, we're going to need help, whether it's bonding, revenue bonding, GO bonds, but we're going to need something for lab space and vivarium space. Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I really appreciate that. It's important for us. I just a quick reminder of the other data point that I raised. So if we go back to 1980, Rhode Island is the state that has cut its research flagship university the most in the country. So not surprising, one of the consequences of that is that our graduates who are well educated are leaving the state of Rhode Island and going to California, New York, Massachusetts, and wherever to make their careers. Other states are actually not only keeping their graduates, but they're attracting students from out of state. The importance of research and that point, Neil, about the investment in the university and the return, first of all, to the state economy for every dollar, it's $6.25 back to the economy, and certainly just on research alone, we see, as you said, 1 to 3.5. But you know, the startups, the attraction of companies to the state of Rhode Island, the why people will want to work with us, it's because they want to come and work with the faculty and with the graduate students. And so if we're really going to build that innovation hub, that entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we can do it, for example, starting out on the Bay campus, but also here on the Kingston campus. It's important that we have faculty members that have time to do research, to explore things with, you know, various company and industry and NGO partners to be able to work with. And so it gets into a longer term thing, but it's really clear that if you look across the states, Rhode Island is the state in the last 45 years that's really taken it, and the consequences are quite dramatic. Whereas if you look at states like, and you were talking, Tom, about our peers, like Connecticut, and you look at the benefit of what's happened there, and you can see it, the kind of innovation and the kind of companies that they're able, and the spin-offs that are coming out of the laboratories, they are quite significant. So
We need to keep this simple for the state. I mean,
yeah,
if the state knew that UConn and UMass had 100 to $150 million more in research funding than we have, they'd say, well, why is that? And then we just lay it out.
yeah,
This is why.
Yeah.
This is the support to get in. This is the fixture. This is the facilities. And then it's there's got to be an investment. We have to make it. The state has to make it. I think How about one question as I'm thinking through this? Barbara Provost, she will be an ex officio on this committee. She should be, I think.
she should be. She's certainly going to be.
She's going to have a lot on her plate, but I think this would be, as we start this process early on, to get a full and fulsome understanding of it and the challenges, plus her experience in it, and then obviously her position, excuse me, as provost. I think it'd be important for her to attend these meetings.
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. We don't want to get ahead of her or behind her, or we want her right with us.
Right. To the point. Okay. Well, we'll pull this all together. I think we're in violent agreement. We need to pull the pieces together and get clarity around that. So, what about assistance? What kind of assistance does this committee need? I guess most of it will come from your area, Peter, I suppose. Not that you have,
Depends on what's required, I would imagine.
not that you have nothing else to do, but
I don't have a plethora of staff.
yeah, no, I know. I get it. I guess we'll make do. You've done a lot of the legwork already, so I'm going to suggest that our first meeting, we spend some time on the information that you sent out in an executive summary, so we all get kind of level set on what the playing field is, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and et cetera. Because there was a lot of information in there that was, it was really well done. I mean, it well done from the standpoint of there were action items that you could get your arms around. Okay.
Yeah. And there's one of the folders also has a plan that we developed built around those audit reports.
I saw that. Yep.
And that might be worth spending a little time on, although it's obviously aspirational.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How about time frame for this committee? What were you thinking, Margot or Neil? I mean, this is a subcommittee of your committee, so is this a 12 to 18 month committee, or I'm just throwing it out?
Margot, go ahead,
At the end of this, I think,
Yeah.
at the end of this, we hit all the points that we've all been talking about. And one of the points has to be, what is the structure of research now, given what we've just done? Where should research be in the Board of Trustees? should it be a separate committee? Should it stay in the committee? I'm not saying what it should be. I'm just saying I think that's one of the outcomes. And
Yeah.
I think
So Neil and I talked about this. I mean, it feels like it's probably 12 months, and if it needs to be longer, it's longer. But I think we want to be able to hand back to the board.
Yeah.
And it's, probably through the Academic Affairs Committee, but not necessarily, that may not necessarily be our outcome. So I don't want to constrain it by that. But I want to be able to have periodic updates to the board on what we're finding in the committee, and then a final recommendation when that's ready. And it feels to me like it's about a year. It's going to take us that amount of time to learn, understand how it coordinates with what Mark's vision and goals are. And a lot of this does sit with Peter, but I also think, I think Bethany said it, that we have to also think about what's the full scope of this? Like, what does it really mean to be a fulsome research university? And it may be that there are other parts of, or other aspects that we discover along the way because we're learning.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, to answer your question, I think it's about a year.
So to delve deeper into that, it would be my nature, and I'm not sure it's right, but it would be my nature that when we discover some shortcomings or ways we can get some wins, we implement those fast as
along the way.
We're not going to do a patchwork, but
right.
I don't want to wait a year to say, okay, this is the total product. Are you guys? So this committee has some authority to do that or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that actually, as you know, in many ways, when you're doing a project like this, it empowers the project along the way. If you're getting some wins along the way, it feels like you've got momentum. So yeah, I wouldn't want it to be just like this terminal point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, you had your. Yeah.
Just a quick point. I think it would be good when we meet in February if we could have maybe an event with the Board of Trustees that sort of a social event that involves the new cohort of PhD students that we're able to recruit this year on these fellowships, along with their faculty advisors. We had such a sort of at the beginning of the year, such an event at the Alumni Center, and it was great. There were a lot of good energy, a lot of good enthusiasm, and I think that would be, of course, one thing that you would be able to see some really good things that are taking off and taking place here.
Yeah, Mark, I think it's a great idea. February is not going to be an in-person meeting.
Okay.
But we could have a few of them virtually tell us what they're working on, and we can always have another social event.
So maybe make it smaller. We could ask Brenton DeBuff, the dean of the graduate school, to pick to bring a few, and then have something. When is the next meeting after that? I should know these things, of course.
April, I think.
April.
Okay.
Okay.
May,
Neil, go ahead.
I like that idea. I mean, the extent that we can signal to the faculty and the doctoral students, that we're really interested in what they've got to tell us, the better off we are. The other thing is this notion of deadline. I think 12 months is reasonable. I fully agree that intermediate reports along the way, particularly if we've reached a conclusion about something, to both the board and anybody in the larger community, we think is important. One thing I would like to stress is that I'm not familiar with the budget preparation and proposal delivery process, but I would sure like to have something from this committee about, our concern about the level of support provided the university to accompany whatever Mark and his team presents during hearings and the like, without putting him in any kind of awkward position.
Right.
Him telling us what would be helpful for us to provide him by way of support. It's just that, this issue of funding is urgent.
I agree.
As I said, I was shocked to see the data that Mark presented at the last couple of meetings regarding the history of funding at URI and where it puts the institution relative to prospective peers.
Mark, you've had some good conversations up at the State House, right?
Oh, Mark, you're on mute.
I think you're muted, Mark.
I thought I had clicked. I guess I did, but I didn't click hard enough. I think the good thing this year is that we were able this summer to really sit down and look at the needs for the university. A lot of it gets back to just core funding for. So, for example, Peter has outlined the needs. The provost's office has outlined the academic needs. We had a sequence of deans. We looked across all the administrative support services that would be needed, from general counsel to human resources. So that's really an important first step. I really want to emphasize, I'm not just asking for the state to with an investment to help us. We're also going to have to help ourselves, and we're going to have to do a little bit of our own cleanup of the university. And that's also, again, an example where I think Barbara, when she looked at nursing, they had all these specializations with maybe potentially one faculty member in that particular, and it was like, no, we're going to focus, we're going to be good in these areas, and we're going to put our energy into that. So I think we've certainly, getting ready for January. Obviously, the first budget announcement will come from the governor's office. So just to remind, our two big asks this year, one is around the operating budget. That's so that we go up to 123 million. That represents about a 33% increase in last year's operating budget. We've also taken account of the fact that we are going to see a significant increase in funding, because of tuition, but we really need this 1/3 increase from the state. So that's 123. We're also asking for 123 million in RICAP funding. The biggest piece of that is 82.3 million for the sports facilities. And we are having a visit this week also from the state legislature too. And we're doing it very similar to what we did out on Narragansett Bay, where we've had students. So we'll have student athletes, coaches, and we're going to go look at our track. We're going to go look at our softball field. We're going to look at our east stands in the football. We'll go look at our, baseball and so forth. So, so we're in regular communication, and I think that's the last thing is during the
money
piece.
for additional lab space in that.
At this point, no. The plan is in the back of the mind. We just went through a successful general obligation request. We have, so they know that when we put our ARPA ask in last year, we had the Student Health Center need, we had the Student Success Center, and we had the Life Sciences building ask for that. And we do need the Life Sciences because, as Bethany will tell you, we have 2 or 3 faculty in spaces where there really should only be 1 faculty member. So we're thinking already, we're getting ready for the next general obligation bond ask, which is for Life Sciences building.
We need that sooner than later. That if we do it, I'm gonna beat it up now, but it's going to be 4 years from now by the time we get the building, if given the life cycle. But that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, one point. One thing that Mark just reminded me of. I've been thinking about. I know you and I sat on the research on the URI Foundation, so we know how that works. But I've also been thinking about, are we as prescriptive as we could be in terms of who and how we want to raise money? And so if we're really shifting the narrative around the goals that Mark has laid out, and one of them is to be a really stellar research university, I don't know if that is completely in sync with how Lil is fundraising. So, and maybe it is, but it also could be a whole new avenue for us. And I think we should put that on the
Yep.
list of things we're looking at, because it's going to be up to us to find external sources too. And I just don't know how deep we're going in that direction.
Good point. I think it's a good point. Yeah, especially for private contributions or public contributions from corporations. Okay. My bent is to have more shorter meetings.
I like the shorter part, yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to these 2 and 3 hour, 4 hour sessions. So, I mean, I could see us, if it's a 1-year program, I could see us having, 10 meetings a year, an hour and a half, just every month, just ticking them off. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to work on that. Okay. That's all I had. I think that's all that's on the agenda, but anybody else have any other comments, closing comments, or areas that we didn't touch on? Mark, I think it'd be helpful to the committee, for Neil and Bethany and I, just if you could put like 3 bullet points down on what you really want this. I mean, I think I understand it, but what you really want the outcome of this committee to be, that you would say, okay, this is exactly what I needed. Now, you might not like the answer, but at least, we should be assisting you to help get the answers and solutions to some of these problems.
I think it's just, Tom, it's really important. Certainly our alignment, I think, is key here. And I think it's also key, obviously, our alignment with the faculty of the university. And
Yep.
so one of the things that we will do, there are 2 things. One is in the new year, as we break out the new strategic plan, there'll be some formal occasions where we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the state of the university, but there's also going to be, I'm planning visits with Barb Wolf to go and talk to the different colleges and schools and just to have these frank conversations. So it's really important that we're in this together, and it's not an easy. If it was easy, it would have been done, but it hasn't been done for 45 years. And from what I've heard, it's not been done for 70 years. So it's nobody's fault. It's just, so that's why, acknowledging it and saying this is where we are and where we could be rather quickly if we were able to do some of the.
We may have missed some of those key points in the interview process and the hiring process with you, Mark.
I missed asking about them, you mean, or?
Well, maybe we weren't fully transparent.
We,
I'm only kidding.
Tom, we knew everyone likes surprises, so we didn't
That's
want
right.
to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why you're chosen, because you can handle this.
Yeah. No, there's lots of good people here. My sense is, again, for me, it was sort of very special on Friday when some of our senior faculty sort of stepped back and looked at it and said, hey, this is something different, and now we're looking at things that we haven't looked at before. And you want to be at a school that's winning and getting stronger and all those kind of good things. So it's we'll get there, just like the basketball team's on its route to getting there. So
we're building. Okay.
We're building. Yeah.
I think I'm supposed to do something here. Hold on. Okay, final item on the agenda is to adjourn. I have a motion to, well, first of all, I'll try to pull this together. Michelle will work together to get kind of some of these bullet points that we teed up. We can have them as our guideposts as we go along, and then I'll try to get some dates on the calendar for everybody.
Good.
So we can move it along. It's sooner than later. 'Cause I
Okay.
know
Is it possible to try to avoid the 2 weeks of January term? In January, I'm going to be teaching and I'm not going to be able to call in.
Okay, so we'll just give those to Michelle.
Michelle, she knows the calendar.
Okay. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, so move.
There's a second.
Deal.
Second.
Any discussion? I seeing, hearing none, we adjourn. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.